I'm Martin. Hey, and for the next 15 minutes, I'll be talking about Remix and some cool features that it has. And at the end of the presentation, I will try to compare it a little bit with Next.js and Gatsby and see what comes out of it. So let's dive in. First question that everyone has, I'm sure, is what exactly is Remix, right? So if you take a look at the web page, it actually has a nice claim, which is, okay, it's focused on the web standards, modern web UX, and better websites, basically. So that's like the claim of this new React framework. And it sounds cool, it's nice, good, but who actually claims it? Like, who are the guys behind it, and should we actually trust it? So, who created it? You actually might know these guys, like the guys on the left, Ryan Florence and Macháček. Those are the creators of React Router, which I think everyone knows from React world. And the guy on the right is actually Ken C. Dodds, who is creator of Downshift, which is pretty popular React library for dropdowns and stuff like that. So actually capacities in the React world. So I think we can trust them. They also have some team behind them, so it looks nice. So, who created? Nice, done. And let's dive into the key features, actually. So what does the Remix offers? So the major thing is nested route. And basically, in order to explain the nested route, I actually stole a website that they have on their website, so inspiration. And you probably know it even from React Router. This is actually the core feature of React Router as well. So basically, imagine a website, right, which consists from a couple of routes, which define some elements, right? So you have basically the base route, which is the root. You have the content of the page, which is like a sales component, for example. Inside of it, you have some tabs, and each tab defines its own route and component, exactly, which is, for example, invoices. And inside of the invoice, you can actually have a detail, which is, for example, some invoice number 10-200 or whatever. Yeah. So this is the structure basically of the component, the routes that we have there. If you take a look at the code base itself, it will actually look like this. Basically, we'll have a root component, and in the routes you will have sales invoices underneath it, and invoices with an ID underneath that as well. So nice little tree structure inside the repo itself. And so, what does actually Remix does with that? Basically, what it does is that it takes a look at the structure itself and runs everything on the server. Basically, it takes the whole structure, and every time that when the user requests that page, it actually builds everything on the server side, loads all of the data, creates the document itself, which is completely done, and serves it to the customer, right? This is server-side rendering. Everybody knows that. And actually, this is the main feature of Remix, because it does everything on the server and basically bundles everything together. So you don't have to wait for the base document to load, to put it on the client, wait for the invoices to load and load their data. Everything is done on the server at one go. Everything is optimized. And as you can see down there, actually it loaded a document, which is like the whole page, and then in parallel, it loaded the JavaScript for all of these components. So you have it like hydrated and interactive. So this is like the huge thing. It actually is much faster than most of the stuff that we were building up until now, and it's really cool. So next one, and you actually could see in the claim as well. It's focused on web standards and what it means. Basically, we had a nice presentation about HTML, and Remix uses the core basics of HTML inside. And for example, the forms, right? Basically, in each project, huge forms are always a problem. You're always battle with it, a lot of stuff that needs to be implemented again and again. And basically, Remix did the basic thing that it just took basic HTML form and said, okay, just use that. It actually works from the beginning. We'll just add a little bit of a wrapper around it. That's like the form component. And that's it. And it actually uses Fetch API underneath, so everything is handled by the browser itself. So also performant a lot. And regarding the form, Remix actually adds some little bit functionalities over there. So for example, you get automatic, let's say, event cancellation and racing condition handling for free. If you use the form, everything is happening on the inside of a Remix, and it handles that, which is also nice. So there was that feature. And now for my favorite is error handling. And I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about a couple of things that are like kind of a little bit weird about this error boundary. So think for yourselves. Yeah, you got it? So, any points? What is weird about it? No one. OK, I'll tell you. Basically, it's a function. That's the first. There are no did catch or derives state from error or whatever it's called in React. This is basically more React way how to handle errors than React itself. That's my opinion. So that's nice. So basically, you can have a root error boundary that actually enables you to define the whole structure of the document itself. So that's why we can see the HTML over there and the body and some meta links. This you may also know from Next.js. They have it like the same. But they don't end there. Basically, they have another couple of boundaries. This is a regular boundary that you can have inside of each component. And it actually handles all of the errors that happen on the page. And one more. They have an additional error boundary, which is called catch boundary, which actually handles the errors on the server side. And what I mean by that is whenever a server, let's say, responds with a 404, you can actually catch that in that component and under that component differently. So then you can basically have a whole page which looks how it should, but one component will just like render, OK, this bit is 404, sorry for that, but the rest of the application actually works. So a nice way how to like define pieces of the application that work by themselves. So that's great. Good. So now we've seen a couple of things, a couple of key features. So how does a road component actually looks like? What is inside of that? So I've taken some component, I've collapsed everything so that it fits on the slide, and let's go through it. Basically, first you have the component itself there, the slide in the middle. And it contains the whole render function and everything. It's basically a regular component, right? Then you can have a loader, which is the specific of the of the Remix, sorry. And what loader actually does is that it loads all of the data that you need for the component, and it loads it on the server side. So you basically define a server side part of the application and also the client's application in one file, which is cool. So the loader actually handles all of the loading of data and passes it down to the component. What about the action? The action is the other way around. Basically, if something happens in the component, for example, a form submission, in the action you can actually handle it, get the form data, and also it runs on the server as well. So basically you have two parts that are happening on the server. And if you actually want to use some bits from the server, for example, like the file system, you should actually define it somewhere else. So it actually forces you to split the logic elsewhere, which is also a nice feature to that. Good. And the last part is basically the error boundaries, which I've talked about earlier. So you can have everything inside of the one function, just like single file component, let's say, similar to Vue. But this time it's actually a function of everything inside of that server and client side. So that's how the component looks like. And now for the comparison. Basically, I've taken a couple of bits that I found interesting, and let's go through them. First is the data fetching. Basically, Remix handles everything on the server. It is purely server-sided. So the client is only for the visualization and creation of the DOM inside of the browser. So that's that. In comparison, the Next.js can actually load the data on the server, right? Server-side rendering. It can load the data inside of the build pipeline. That's for the gem stacks, for example, or on the client. Remix can actually do the client as well, but it should be done on the server, so that's why it's not there. And Gatsby, that's like for the static side, so it only loads data on the client and during the build process. So that's the first bit. The build environment. This is actually an interesting point, because Next.js and Gatsby, whenever you run the build, it actually builds inside of the node, and Remix as well. But it does not rely on it. It is built in a way that it actually starts with Node, but you can actually switch it for Deno, for example. So nice little feature. Now, rendering techniques. Basically, what I mean by that is, does it like render everything on the server or client? Yeah. So Remix, as I mentioned, renders everything on the server. So not much is happening on the client. Basically, everything happens on the server. Next, on the other hand, can have server-side rendering and can have also server-side generation, which is a new feature from like 2019. And Gatsby, it was always focused on server-side generation, and now it supports server-side rendering as well. So Remix is also on the side with only the SSR. The routing solution, also interesting point, because Remix uses React Router. Right? What else? Because that's like the industry standard, and also the creator of Remix is the same guy as created the React router, so why not? Next.js uses its own router, and Gatsby actually uses Reach router, which is actually also from the creator of Remix. And actually, Reach router was discontinued, kind of, and React router is the surviving project. So yeah. So the routing solution is currently the industry standard inside of the Remix. And the UI solution, also an interesting point, because Next.js and Gatsby is used only in the React world, right? And it will probably stay like that. And Remix is originally designed to be run on the React side of the world as well. But they actually started working on porting it to Vue and also to Svelte. So you can actually have knowledge of the one framework and use it with different technologies, which is also amazing that the guys did or still doing. Yeah. So that's the comparison. And now let's add my bit to what I think that you should choose for your next project. Basically, I've assembled a couple of points. Basically, whenever you and that is my opinion, right? So whenever you are creating a new website, which is purely just like for views, for like company website, and the content doesn't change that much, then like, yeah, go for the Gatsby, because the development is actually fast. You have a lot of plugins. It's nice and easy. It's good. But whenever you have a lot of dynamic content, you need to like change the page, change everything a little bit more than like once in a week, let's say. Let's go for the Next, because Next actually can do a lot of stuff like Gatsby, and it's actually easier to update and work with. So that would be my take. But if you will have a new project that should handle server and a client, and you want to have everything at one place, nice and fast with everything ready, I think that you should try Remix, because it looks really nice. So whenever you just start building some project that will have some server part, just think about, okay, I've heard about Remix, it looks nice, maybe I should try that. So, and with that, that's everything from me, and thank you for your attention. Mm-hmm.